This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around to the end of the video to hear about a special offer they're making available through my channel.
This is gonna be weirder than usual. Can't be helped. You called me. So here I am.
You know that saying that something is greater than the sum of its parts? Well, in a weird way, Control feels like the absolute opposite of that, in that it has these individual components that are just remarkable when you look at them in isolation. But when you put it all together and tally it all up, it just feels like something's missing. The X factor, the secret sauce, the zhuzh, whatever you want to call it, it's just not there. And as the credits rolled, I found myself appreciating Control for its technical, artistic, and mechanical excellence, but having no real affection for it whatsoever. Because yes, this game is, at times, truly remarkable. When you look at what goes into creating the moment-to-moment combat encounters, the world design, the lighting, the world building, the lore, the music, the use of destructibility, all of this stuff is literally some of the best you will find across the medium of video games. I was truly blown away by so much of what Control has to offer. But I think at its core, Control feels like a game that promises an immersive, confounding, new weird experience, but doesn't ever fully commit to that vision. Its characters and narrative are horribly inconsistent, oscillating wildly between laboriously obvious exposition and genuinely frustrating opaqueness. Its game design seems so incongruent to the tone of the overall experience, at times truly immersing you in this incredible world, and at other times giving you these gamified objectives like get headshots with a specific weapon, or forcing you to endlessly clear out your inventory of the awful mods which add nothing to Control whatsoever. Most strangely, the absolute best parts of Control are hidden in the lore collectibles scattered throughout the world, or the side quests that may or may not even be found. This absolutely rewards those who invest the time to find those things, but the sheer volume of greatness here, compared to the frankly lackluster main campaign, means that a lot of people will never experience Control's finest reveals or moments. Control feels like a game of two parts. One part so unique and magnetic that you feel drawn to it. The other part just so unnecessary and generic. Either way, and I know this is going to sound weird, but I think this is a game that you should play if you are someone that loves video games. The individual components are so good that they will teach you things about this medium. They will enlarge your perspective. You probably aren't going to refer back to Control as an amazing game, but you're sure to refer back to parts of it as truly breathtaking. And that, in my view, makes it worth the price of admission. But maybe when that price is on sale.
Welcome to the research sector of the Federal Bureau of Control. I'm Dr. Casper Darling, head of research. Somebody thought this video would make for great internal communications. I'm looking at you, Mr. Tomasi. So, this is where the magic happens.
Control is set entirely in this space, the Federal Bureau of Control. There are no other settings, no outdoor spaces, it's just this for the game's 10 to 15 hour duration. You might worry that this would start to feel repetitive, but as soon as you step into the Bureau, it's clear that this isn't just office space. One of the first things we learn, in fact, is that the Bureau refers to its building as the oldest house, and the staff who occupy it seem locked in some sort of eternal struggle to control it, as though the government department took up residence in this haunted house and have to keep the ghosts at bay. Without a doubt, the most gripping and transfixing aspect of Control is its setting. We're talking about a space that can meld seamlessly from 1960s style office cubicles into astral planescapes, where monolithic protean topography must be purged to reveal the fluorescently lit welcome lobby beneath it. I've never played a game that looks like this and that does space in this way. It's just It's so good, like the amount of design imagination that goes into each of these spaces, utilizing this brutalist style architecture as the building blocks for both the earthly and the paranormal areas. And I think this is something that's really key to appreciate when you're talking about Control's world design. This isn't just office space plus funky weird shit, all of them completely divorced from each other. The structural nature of the otherworldly spaces is an extension of the brutalist architecture of the real world, or vice versa, depending on how much you come to learn about the oldest house. I think it would have been really easy for Remedy to have gone completely wild with their environment designs as you tumble down various rabbit holes, but there's a discipline to the design here where no matter where you go and what you're seeing, the world itself is never breaking character. And there's a fair amount to see here too. Office space, power plants, research centers, sewers, quarries, furnaces, whatever. There's only a small amount of square mileage here, but the density in each of these spaces reminds me of something like Resident Evil 2, which famously had a small number of areas to explore, but each one looms so large in memory owing to how brilliantly they were realized. While the spaces themselves are interesting, it's the framing of them that really elevates them. I mean, this is a room with a phone in it, but look at it, it looks like Cerebro. I mean, you don't even need to know what this thing does to know that it's a big deal because the environment tells you so. Every new space seems to have this sort of spotlight that it's casting on something or other. And I don't mean a literal spotlight, I mean there's just something there that seems to capture and hold your attention in such a way that leaves an impression on you. And I know I said I don't mean a literal spotlight, but this review would be incomplete without looking at the lighting in this game and how truly next generation it feels. I think that history will remember Control as the first truly RTX ray trace enabled game. Plenty of other games have had ray tracing, but for most of these the performance cost was too high or the impact was too low. If you have a PC powerful enough, Control's ray tracing enabled lighting, reflections and ambient fill are enough to sell you on the merits of this technology alone. For a game that is entirely about visual presence, having a lighting engine this powerful to flood spaces or create contrast is just such a huge boost to the overall impact of the visual palette. Honestly, if you have an RTX card, it's worth grabbing Control just to serve as a tech demo for the technology, the way we used to, run Crysis on max settings to benchmark our new GPUs. For those without ray tracing and on consoles, don't worry, you're still in for a visual feast, though you should expect a very inconsistent experience. I played Control on a PC as well as a PS4 Pro, and I gotta say that the PS4 frame rates tanked really hard when the action heated up, to the point where I was like, really? I don't have footage of that here, but yeah, it was bad, and if you're someone that wants a really stable frame rate, then Control is simply not for you. Even despite these technical shortcomings, I suspect that the people who end up loving Control will do so for its spaces. I think one of the reasons we love Blade Runner as much as we do is because of how visually visionary it was, with the Egyptian-styled Tyrell architecture set against the Neo-Tokyo-inspired metropolis. So much of Blade Runner's impact was visual, and even if you didn't like Blade Runner or you found parts of it boring or whatever, it still had a visual magnificence that draws you in. It's much the same here with Control, where the game feels like it knows the effect these spaces will have on the player, and the game aims to give the player time enough to drink it all in. There's lots of virtual tourism to be had in these moments running through the halls of the Federal Bureau of Control, and the memory of this space will stay with me far longer than my memory of the story told within it, because to be honest, the story kind of sucks. Now, the visual design of this game is objectively brilliant. I mean, like, you just can't argue that. What I'm about to talk about now is far more subjective, and that's the characters and the story. I know some people who have really loved these things, but I have to say, I think they are bad. Like, I just think they're bad, and it makes me sad because there's so much potential here that I think was wasted. So in Control, you play as Jessie, who arrives at the Bureau because she's trying to track down her long-lost brother, who she was separated from in her youth. Very soon, though, she finds herself the new director of the Bureau and is tasked with pushing back the Hiss, the paranormal force which has penetrated the Bureau's office and taken hold of many of its employees. Now, from the outset, Control is trying to establish a tone like if you cross the X-Files with Twin Peaks. X-Files because it's all about government control and conspiracy and redacted documents and classified research, and Twin Peaks because of shit like this.
Hey, Meg! What are you drawing? I'm drawing a dog!
I'm drawing the pyramid.
The what?
The pyramid.
A lot of people have talked about the Scp Wiki, which I personally didn't know about, but after learning about it, I went and did some reading when I finished the game, and yes, Control is basically just SCP, the video game. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, Protect, and it's a fictional government agency tasked with protecting the populace from the threats posed by the hidden paranormal world. Its canon is fleshed out with community contributions like this. SCP-4971 is a space-time anomaly existing within the former Southwood Parkwood Mall of Havensbrook, Indiana. The true location of SCP-4971 within the mall is uncertain and variable. Anyone who leaves the main concourse of the mall will invariably eventually find themselves within SCP-4971. The physical limits of SCP-4971 are currently unknown, but are expected to far outreach those of the Southwood Park Mall. Did you like my little reading there? Look, it goes on to talk about the way this anomaly was discovered, the risks it poses, the steps that have been taken to contain it, etc., etc. If you spend time reading through the SCP files, a core conceit is the way that normal everyday locations like a shopping mall or everyday objects like a soccer ball can house paranormal power, putting us in close proximity every day to things so dangerous to us, but that we never even knew existed. Control's world is built on the same conceit. An 8-inch floppy disk houses the power of telekinesis. A slide projector grants access to other dimensions. A child's carousel gives your character lightning-fast speed. All of these objects are housed within the Bureau's headquarters, and it's your job to find at least some of them throughout your playthrough. When it comes to Control, there's honestly a right and wrong way to play it. The wrong way is just to rely on cutscenes to flesh out your understanding of the world. The right way is to take the time to read through the dozens of files, memos, audio logs, and video recordings scattered throughout the world. If you do this, you're going to have a slower, but more meaningful and far more rewarding experience. I didn't read the logs while I was playing because I was streaming and it would have slowed things down, but after I finished the game, I went back and read and watched every single one, and I walked away just loving the world that Remedy have created here. Like, my gun, for example. I mean, it's pretty special in that it kind of reloads itself and it has these weird floating bits, but through my reading, I learned that it's also likely Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, or it's Arthur's Excalibur sword. It just evolves with time and it takes a form most fitting. That isn't explained to you in any kind of cutscene dialogue. You have to eke it out of the lore files, but doing so made my relationship with my service weapon so much more meaningful. The game is full of this stuff. It's so interesting and weird, and it's just cool. It's just fucking cool. It's a cool world, and I want more games to do what Remedy have done here. I think part of the reason I appreciated these lore entries is because they're so incomplete and they leave so much to the imagination, which ironically is almost the exact opposite of how Remedy delivers its story and characterization. I'd argue that the backbone of Control is this distinctly narrative-led experience delivered through in-game cutscenes. As Jessie, you need to enlist the help of various Bureau employees to find your brother, push back the Hiss, unlock the secrets of the oldest house, etc., etc. The problem is that almost every cutscene feels so video gamey. Like, the actors' performances are so weirdly polished and lifeless, like this person.
It seems to have spread everywhere and to everyone, not protected by an HRA. And, extraordinarily, you. You are the director, and that makes you special by definition. Trench is no longer the director, obviously.
And there's all these dialogue options that just result in exposition dumps, like you're clicking a Wikipedia entry or speaking to Avina from Mass Effect Citadel. There's no effort to obscure any of this or bring in any nuance. It's just kind of shoved in your face in a way that doesn't seem to respect the audience's intelligence. This issue is writ large all over the main character's performance, which is constantly cutting to her inner monologue so you know exactly what she's thinking.
Do I tell her it looked like a suicide? Like, do you know my brother Dylan? I don't know her, but I like her already. She's the opposite of the faceless agency I've blamed for what happened to me for so long.
There's just nothing mysterious about this character when I know every thought and when none of those thoughts are actually interesting. If there was something compelling going on in this head of hers, I'd be all for it, but typically these close-ups are just lazy plot devices to foreshadow events or just provide exposition. The one stark contrast to all of this is the janitor, Artie. I mean, like, watch this.
But first, we need to get you working. Very small, couple of hours job.
Something tells me it's gonna be more than that.
You think there's a dog buried in this? I can tell you are not yesterday's Krause's son. That's why you'll make a great assistant.
Now this is how you do it. He's creepy. He's weird. He talks funny. He clearly knows things he isn't telling you. Imagine if in his exchanges we constantly zoomed in and heard his inner monologue. I'm hungry, what time smoko? The character would be ruined. Way less enigmatic, way less interesting. This is essentially what they did to the main character, while the other supporting characters have almost nothing interesting to say either. I guess I have to bring up faces as well. I'm not usually someone who worries about this stuff, but damn, the facial animations are really bad and really problematic for a game like this. This is about tense face-to-face interactions, but you're just ripped out of these scenes by faces that look like they're competing with Mass Effect Andromeda for the most tired face award.
The big rumbling metal thing. Salvador, head of security, asked me to protect it in case of an attack. See, what's inside is dangerous. Dr. Darling seemed to know it would be a target.
Darling? He's here?
No, he came down a few days ago, before everything went to hell. He was out of it. Smelled like a bar mat.
Beyond characters, the story itself that drives the action forward is just really bad. Like, its biggest moments never land. You never get any sort of satisfying answers. There's just so many moments that just fizzle out. Like, the ending though, the ending is bad. The ending is really bad. It really blows. I don't know, look. Again, very subjective. Maybe other people really love this. I'm sure there are some people out there that did love it. I personally did not enjoy it at all. Look, I've said a lot of different stuff here about tone and story and voice and actors and facial animations and whatever else. So just let me summarize it by saying this. I think good suspense or thrillers or mysteries or whatever are made great by what is left unasked and unsaid. When the writers are doing it right, they let the audience sort of ask their own questions and fill in the blanks with their imagination, while still giving them enough to, like, you know, lead them on the journey, enough breadcrumbs, enough big moments that land. Just it's a tense balance, right? Control is a game that is constantly oscillating between a desire to showcase a world that naturally invites these sorts of questions and a desperate desire to say the quiet part loud just to make sure the audience didn't miss anything. It's the difference between The Wire and CSI Miami, and it's all the difference in the world in an experience like this. So yeah, the story kind of sucks, but hey, the shooting is really fucking good. So there's this oscillating quality to the game's narrative and tone, but that oscillation is nothing compared to the whiplash-inducing jump that are this game's action sequences. If you're unfamiliar with Remedy, shame on you! No, but seriously, these were the guys that did Max Payne 1 and 2 and Alan Wake, and more recently Quantum Break. When it comes to third-person action shooters, these guys are absolutely the best in the business and some of the most experienced developers in the world, and as you play through Control, you'll really feel the benefit of that expertise shining through at every turn. At the heart of combat is your otherworldly handgun known as the service weapon. It has a nice chunky magazine, it refills its bullets automatically so long as you don't use the gun for a few seconds. Pulling the trigger feels immediately satisfying with weighty recoil and feedback, great sound design, and when playing on console, just the right amount of auto aim to keep things flowing without feeling like the game is playing itself. While your weapon will always remain a handgun, you can unlock modes of fire for it that drastically alter its performance. One mode will make it akin to a shotgun, the other one makes it sort of like a SMG, the other one like a sort of sniper rifle, etc. There's really no best option either, giving you the freedom to play however you choose, mixing things up to keep combat feeling fresh throughout most of your playthrough. Your gun is only one half of the combat equation though. The other and far more impressive component are the various telekinetic powers you gain access to. You can levitate, use objects as shields, and hurl items at enemies. Further upgrades in your upgrade tree will allow you to levitate for longer, or do more throw damage, all the standard sort of RPG-like progression stuff you've seen in hundreds of games before. But my god, the destruction that these powers are capable of wreaking is astonishing. I mean, look at this. Look at what is left of the environment when I am done. Concrete railings smashed, desks destroyed, paper flying everywhere. It's just glorious to see this game in action, and these powers combined with the destructibility of these spaces create this cyclone of destruction that you won't find in almost any other game. Honestly, just like pick up something, anything, and start smashing it into things. How could you not be impressed by this? It's fantastic. Combat doesn't just look flashy though. At its fundamental level, it's also expertly constructed. Your weapon will stagger enemies in just the right way. There emerges a natural rhythm whereby your ammo runs dry and you naturally switch to your powers while you're waiting for it to recharge. Your dash ability allows you to dodge projectiles or grenades and reposition, or move in close with your shotgun mod equipped for devastating damage, and enemies drop health shards, encouraging a sort of push forward combat akin to something like Doom or Bloodborne, where the player is rewarded for playing aggressively and pushing their skill to the limit. Enemy design and AI isn't the best, but despite this, combat feels really superb. It's a 10 to 15 hour game, depending on how you play it, and I just constantly found myself loving the rush of combat in this game for almost the entire thing. I say almost because towards the end, things really start to break down. See, combat is actually quite simple and repetitive, but you don't really feel that as a player because most of the combat encounters are quite short. Toward the end of the game though, Remedy seeks to up the challenge by throwing all of the enemies at you all of the time, and it really blows. It reminded me of Prey 2016, which had built this tense, intelligent, immersive sim that delivered brilliant combat over, 15 hours, only to ruin the last 2 or 3 hours by spamming enemies absolutely everywhere so as to... I don't even know what they were trying to do. I don't know why they did that. It made no sense. The final missions certainly didn't ruin my love for the combat, but they definitely dampened my overall appreciation of the game. So just watch out for that as you near the end game. Coming back to the progression side of things, there's a skill tree, sure, no problem. There's also mods to collect, and this was one of my biggest frustrations I had with the game because it was just so gamey and pointless, and it really just pulled you out of the immersion that Control is trying to create. The weapon mods are everywhere and your inventory soon fills up, so you need to delete crappy mods. But they all have sort of similar or identical icons, and they have rarities, but the stats can be different within each rarity. So you're looking at all these values all the time and deleting them, then you delete a few so you can get back to the action fast, but in mere moments your inventory is full again because you didn't delete enough last time, so now you need to delete more. It just feels like it never ends. And there's just so much bloat. Like, no one is going to use the reduce dodge cost mod when I can give myself an extra 20% health instead. Like, dodge is already really cheap. I don't need it to be cheaper. That's just dumb. You could have done away with this entire mod system and nothing of value would have been lost. This whole thing sits so awkwardly atop a game that strives to create this otherworldly experience, but I'm constantly being pulled back to the real world with all of this video game admin. I think the same sort of thing can be said of the way weapon upgrades work. Like, if I want to upgrade one of my pistols, I need 4 of a specific item to do that. I went through the entire playthrough never getting any of these because I later learned that I need to kill enemies in a specific part of the map to do that. So in one moment, the game wants me to go through this mind-bending journey into the paranormal to rescue my brother and uncover the secrets of a clandestine quasi-government governmental agency, and the next moment it wants me to go to a specific part of the map and farm respawning enemies so I can get a certain material to drop so that I can upgrade my gun, like I'm playing an MMORPG or something. These things do not belong together. They don't belong in this game, and I really believe that Control is far weaker for all of these gamified choices. So at one point I find this dude, and he's sitting in a room and he's just staring at a fridge, and he's super agitated, and he's like, "Get me out of here, man." He has to look at the fridge because the fridge does things when no one is watching it. I agree to help him out, and then here's what happened.
The fridge is doing something!
Philip? Philip?
If I look away, it hurts me. Sounds like the board, but I can't understand it.
Fuck?
This was just amazing, and it was a side quest. Like, unless you seek this out, you will not find it. It's actually like this for most of the game. In fact, all of the truly impressive boss encounters in the game are not part of the main story quest line. The main story quest actually only uses trash mob enemies as bosses for some weird reason. There's no boss like this when you're playing through the main game, and this means that most people will not see this stuff. Just like they won't see how interesting so much of the world is because it's hidden in lore entries and audio recordings and video files that people won't read or listen to or watch. I can't for the life of me understand why Remedy chose to do this. So much of the truly interesting shit in this game is off the beaten path, and I think that most people aren't going to find it. At the start of this video, I said that this is not a game that is greater than the sum of its parts. The parts shine far brighter than the whole. Control feels like a game that was sort of designed by committee, where the combat team had a sub-unit who were responsible for like the weapon progression system, so they needed to develop all of these extra unnecessary skill trees and mods because I guess that's what video games have. It feels like the writing team had a narrative subunit that just didn't work in tandem with the lore subunit who were writing all the background lore. And the story feels completely divorced from the world in which it's set, or at least far weaker for its unwillingness to leverage that world more. All of this side content seems completely separate from the main story, and the quality of the side story content seems to tower above the main story because it does feel more willing to tell stories that flesh out this incredible world. You know what I want? I really want a director's cut of Control. I know that sounds weird, but like, I think this game's components are so strong, but it just seems to lack like a central unifying vision to streamline it and to take more risks with it. I'd love to see another version of this game that strips out the inner monologue bullshit and the boring dialogue, the unnecessary game systems, and takes a pass at the story to better answer the questions that the narrative does dare to raise. I'd like to see that because with foundational elements this strong, that could be incredible. Right now, Control is an intriguing third-person shooter with brilliant technology and gameplay, but one that never fully delivers on the promise of its outstanding world. You know what else is outstanding? Squarespace. A lot of people ask me how to break into reviewing video games, and my answer is always the same: start writing things. Setting up your own blog, website thing with something like Squarespace is a perfect first step, and it's super easy since Squarespace's tools are easy and intuitive, with drag and drop templates allowing you to create your own gaming blog in minutes. Click the link in the description below to get 10% off your first purchase of a website domain. Thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.